Somebody over on this side, you want to share an example of something that was difficult but you had to do it anyway? Anybody? Over here. I'll get you. Over here? Yes.
Get out of bed.
Get out of bed. My mom and my dad are from the World War II era, and she had a favorite song. Someday I'm going to shoot the bugler. Someday they're going to find him dead. And then the other guy who got him up, and then I'll spend the rest of my life in bed. Yeah, right. Somebody over here. Yes. Election. Somebody else? Yes. Okay, so yes, sitting with a loved one through a very difficult time. I'll tell you the thing that immediately came to my mind as soon as I saw this question: going to the dentist. Going to the dentist. Okay, let's get going here. All right, lots to do. Oh, wrong direction. I'm out of practice. One of the things I thought of was, and the book suggested, was visiting with somebody that you don't like to be around, that difficult neighbor, that difficult relative, right? Another one would be ripping off a bandage that's been stuck on you. You ever had to do that, right? Just, they actually have stuff you can buy that's a wipe. You can wipe and it'll help make the adhesive go lessen so it doesn't hurt quite so bad. Or getting a filling for your teeth. Oh, I already had that. All right. Yeah. Okay. In Luke chapter 22, Luke records a difficult and agonizing time for the Lord. That's our lesson today. And he knew it was coming. He knew he was going to suffer. Jesus is a man who was born to die. The Son of God, God with us, Emmanuel, come to the earth, knowing he had an appointment at the cross at Calvary. All right? And he put us above himself. He endured and persevered in his mission. I think it's interesting that in Galatians chapter 5, verses 22 through 23, it lists the fruit of the Spirit: the love, joy, peace, long-suffering, gentleness, goodness, faithfulness, meekness, and self-control, temperance, self-control. Knowing it's difficult, but I'm going to do this anyway because it has to be done, right? He persevered in his mission. So after 3 full years of ministry, the time had come for the Messiah to finish what he had started. Everything in his life led up to this point. The training of the disciples led up to this point. Jesus, for 3 years, trained his men to take his place when he was gone. And now is the time. Now is the time to put up or shut up for them. And it was the hour. Through the strength of the Spirit, the Bible talks about the Spirit's role in the crucifixion and Christ. Through the will of the Father, the Son set his face to the cross. I am going to the cross. Okay? He faced a time of intense physical and emotional suffering. Intense physical, emotional suffering. If you've ever had a dear friend or a close associate stab you in the back, you know what Jesus was facing. If you've ever had somebody that you really trusted prove to be untrustworthy, you know what Jesus was facing. Judas sold him out. Peter denied him. The other disciples scattered, That's suffering. That's difficult. That's tough. Okay? Why is endurance so hard? Let's talk with each other again. Talk to somebody. Why is going on in difficult times so difficult? Why? Share with each other. Talk to each other. Converse. Don't look at me. Converse, okay? For those of you who are watching on video, they're now talking to each other. All right? Why is endurance so hard? Well, it's not easy. Yeah, right. Okay. That's sort of like a definition of a definition. Yeah. Okay. Somebody over on this side. Why is endurance so hard? Yes. Okay, so sometimes endurance is hard because you haven't prepared for it. You haven't prepared for what's available, what you need to do. Okay, how about over here? Why is endurance so hard? Yes. Okay, we lose sight of the goal. You know, just like, yeah, maybe I really didn't want to run this race. I'll go sit with the cheerleaders. That's okay. Yep. Somebody else. Why is endurance so hard? Right. Yes. Life can be difficult, and there's pain and suffering involved, ingrained in life, right? And sometimes we just want to bow out. We can be selfish and lazy, and endurance involves self-denial. Self-denial. Paul talks about this a great deal in the New Testament, doesn't he? Self-denial, being like an athlete, being like a farmer, putting something aside so that you can achieve what you want to accomplish. Somebody talked to Tom Landry one time when he was a coach of the Dallas Cowboys and they were winning championships. They said, "What's your job as a coach?" He says, "Oh, it's very simple." He says, "I take these men and motivate them and push them and challenge them to do things they don't want to do so that they can achieve what they do want to do, and that's win the championship." That's a good definition, right? Self-denial. We tend to forget our goals and get caught up with momentary desires. Isn't this also a problem in our Christian life? Sometimes we get so enamored with the world around us, we forget why we're here, right? That we're ambassadors of Christ. We're representatives of Jesus Christ. We're not to be just like everybody else. We are tired and weak and do not have the strength to endure on our own. We get tired and we get weak. Vince Lombardi, the famous football coach with the Packers who won so many championships, made this statement. He said, "Fatigue will make cowards out of all of us." Fatigue will make cowards out of all of us. If we allow ourselves to get tired, to get run down, we're setting ourselves up for failure. We need to take care of ourselves and be diligent in our self-discipline so that we don't have those times of weaknesses where we just fall apart. Okay? Jesus Christ had endurance. He had perseverance. And he is our example for perseverance. The King of the Jews is wrongly tried. Luke chapter 22, verses 66 through 71. Let's look at this. When day came, the assembly of the elders of the people gathered together, both chief priests and scribes. This is what's known as a Sanhedrin. And they led him away to their council, and they said, "If you are the Christ, tell us." But he said to them, "If I tell you, you would not believe. Why should I? And if I ask you, you will not answer. Why should I? But from now on, the Son of Man shall be seated on the right hand of the power of God." So they all said, "Are you the Son of God then?" And he said to them, "You say that I am." Kind of like, you said it. Then they said, What further testimony do we need? We have heard it ourselves from his own lips. Here's our first observation here. After Jesus was arrested, the Jewish religious leaders didn't follow their own rules for trials as they tried to trap Jesus into the charge of blasphemy. There is so much going on in these pages. And one of the things we have to see and understand is that this Jewish council, the Sanhedrin, under the Roman rule, they enjoyed much autonomy in religious matters. The Romans were willing to give the Jews autonomy as long as they didn't mess things up, okay? As long as they didn't go against the grain. And the Sanhedrin was the organization that ruled over Jewish affairs and took care of their legal matters, according to the Jewish religious law. That's what they did. This is the group that put Jesus on trial, okay? So basically, this is a heresy trial. This is a religious trial. This is them trying to get him to say something that they can say, this is heresy and you're worthy of death. This group consisted of 70 members presided over by the high priest. These were the religious high court of the land. The high priest was the, if we have the Supreme Court, he would be like the head of the Supreme Court, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. The high priest was established by God to be the mediator between God and his people. That was the original intent of God giving them a high priest. He was a mediator who once a year would take the blood of the covenant and sprinkle it on the mercy seat for the sins of the people. But the problem was, by the time of Jesus, the high priests were dominated, one, by extra biblical rules. They added traditions, on traditions, on traditions, on traditions. But also, they were dominated by politics instead of biblical principles. And we're going to see that as this whole thing plays out. There's a lot of politics going on in this chapter. Jesus' trial was in clear violation of the Jewish law. It was an illegal trial. It was a kangaroo court. It wasn't legitimate, even in the eyes of the Jews who were conducting it. He was taken first to Annas, the former high priest, and then the father-in-law of the current high priest at night. Now, here's, as the radio broadcaster used to say, and here's the rest of the story. Annas had been the high priest, but he had greatly offended the Roman governor, and he had been replaced as the high priest. The Roman governor stepped in and said, you're not high priest anymore. I'm going to make your son-in-law the high priest. Now, he did not have the Jewish authority to do that, but he did it anyway. Pilate just didn't care. So what's happening is you have a shadow high priest. You have the high priest who is his son, but then you have Annas. And the Jewish people knew, the people who arrested Jesus knew, that you went to Annas first. He may have even requested that. So you go to his house first for the trial. At night, Jewish law prohibited holding trials at night. You were not to do it in the darkness. You were to do it in the light of day, so it was clear for everybody to see. But they didn't want everybody to know what they were doing because they knew the people were so enamored with Jesus that if they knew the Roman rulers were up to this, they would have rioted. So, the council questioned Jesus' claims of being the Messiah. The Son of God is standing before a council of men being accused of calling himself the Son of God. Think about that. The God in the flesh, God with us, Messiah, is on trial for being who he said he is, or saying who he really is. And he had already demonstrated his divine nature and supreme power, but they would not believe him. Read the Gospels and look at what happens when Jesus did miracles in public. And they ran and told the priests about it, okay? And what you'll find is that on many occasions, when the priests heard about it, they say, we got to get rid of this guy and kill him. Well, no, wait a minute. He just proved he has the power of, no. He can't have the power of God. We have the power of God. We have to kill him, right? He's getting too popular. Because of their unbelief, at this point, Jesus refused to give them a clear-cut confession they wanted. Jesus was not going to put on a dog and pony show for these people. And here's why. He knew that even if he told them the truth, they wouldn't accept it as the truth. In fact, if he gives them the truth, clear-cut truth, they are going to be more accountable at the judgment because they're going to reject it. It's actually an act of mercy on his part. So observation number 2. In view of the Jewish leaders, Jesus' claim of divinity was punishable by death because it would be heresy. If he claims to be God and he's not God, then he's a heretic and he should be killed. And they didn't have any other accusation or testimony that was needed as far as they were concerned other than this one point. Is he claiming to be God? Jesus rightfully claimed to be Son of Man, who will be seated at the right hand of God, a reference to being the Son of God and divine. Jesus knew who he was. He wasn't schizophrenic. Well, yes, I'm God. Well, no, I'm God. I'm not God. Well, yes, I am God. Well, no, I'm not. No. He made it very plain. You said it. The scheming leaders' response showed that Jesus' significant statement was not lost on the Sanhedrin. Their response is, are you the Son of God then? You say you're the Son of Man, are you the Son of God? They made the connection that Jesus was professing to be the Son of God. They understood. They didn't believe it, right? It's like people we talk to today. Jesus Christ, Lord and Savior. Oh, yeah, I agree with that. Do you believe it? Have you put your faith in him? Well, I agree with it. Yeah, it's different. The demons also believe and tremble, James says. They were trying to trap Jesus into saying he's the supreme Son of God. Now, question. Talk amongst yourselves. There's enough people here you can find somebody to talk to. Why did the religious leaders want Jesus condemned and dead? Why were they so after him? Okay? Talk with each other. Come up with a couple of reasons, okay? So, Winnie, why did they want him dead? Okay, good. Bible says that. The Romans will come in and throw us out and make him in charge, right? Okay. Why did the religious leaders want Jesus condemned? Okay, let's get somebody over here on the right. Over here. Why? One reason. Why did they want him dead? Why? Anybody? Going once? Going twice? Oh. So we just wasted 2 minutes and didn't come up with anything. Why? Yes. Yep. So the religious leaders saw the multitudes following Jesus, and then they saw, hey, I want to talk, Tay, come see me, and nah, we'll go to see Jesus, right? And they actually said at one point, we're afraid the Romans will come in and take our power away from us because Jesus will be more popular, right? Okay, somebody over here. Why? Why do they want him dead? Okay, right, they would lose their nation, okay? They would lose their authority, right? See, you got to understand, these are religious leaders, but power is everything to them. Okay, they are at the top of the heap of Jewish society. Oh, there goes a rabbi. And they like that. Jesus even rebuked them for that. Why else? Anybody? Why? Why do they want him dead? Yes. Huh? Yeah, he made them look bad. He made them look ridiculous. Yeah, right. Okay, let's look at a couple. They were angry at him for calling him hypocrites. They said, you bunch of hypocrites, you bunch of actors. You're just putting on like you know what you're talking about, and you don't know what you're talking about. They refused to believe he could be the Messiah. How many miracles did the Messiah have to do? How many prophecies did the Messiah have to fulfill? To me, the most amazing one is when he raises Lazarus from the dead, and the response to that. You look at it, and there are some who immediately believe, but then there's others who run and tell the Jewish leaders and say, he raised the dead. They said, oh, we got to kill him. That's all there is to it. We got to kill him. Okay. And let's see, what else? They were jealous of his popularity, right? They just, nobody comes to my sermon like that. Well, there's a reason why. And they were convicted by his teaching, some of them. It was like, ooh, that hit home, right? Nicodemus was one of them, who actually responded the right way. But there had to be others that understood. Well, it says on several occasions, they understood that he was talking about them in the parable. No, we don't like that. So, point 2, Jesus, the King of Jews, is wrongly accused. Luke 23. The whole company of them arose and brought him before Pilate. And they began to accuse him, saying, we found this man misleading our nation and forbidding us to give tribute to Caesar, and saying that he himself was Christ and King. Pilate asked him, are you the King of the Jews? And he answered him, you said so. Then Pilate said to the chief priests and crowds, I find no guilt in this man. But they were urgent, saying he stirs up the people, teaching throughout all Judea, from Galilee even to this place. Having condemned Jesus on a religious basis, the Sanhedrin sought to have him denounced politically as well. You have to understand the politics and the interaction here. Number one, the Sanhedrin hated Pilate as the Roman governor. They just hated this guy because he had authority over them, and they saw themselves as the ultimate authority. But Pilate also hated them too, because they had been a thorn in his side for years. They're constantly coming and complaining and grumbling and saying, oh, we need to do this, we want to do that. And there's, no, you can't, back and forth. They have been fighting with each other for years. So this is not one friend coming to another saying, hey, we need a favor. This is the Jewish leaders who are supposed to have rule over the religious realm, now coming to the political leader because they need something from him. And so they're going to kind of lay aside their differences and try to finagle what they can get. Oh, wrong one. Okay. He was brought to Pilate, the Roman governor. The Romans liked the people to think that they still had their own nation. They had their king, Herod. They had the Sanhedrin, their religious council. But looking over it all was Pilate. And Pilate was responsible for what happened in the area of Palestine under Rome. Okay? So they have to come to this ultimate ruler to get done what they want done. And he was the only one under Roman law who had the authority to order Jesus' execution. If the Jews had gone ahead and tried to kill Jesus on their own, they would have been liable and brought before Pilate for breaking Roman rule. So they needed Pilate to come on their side. But they knew Pilate was not going to do this on religious terms. So they had to change gears a little bit here, as we'll see. They said Jesus was leading the Jews astray. Now, they're not talking theology. They're talking loyalty. They said, you've got a man here in your kingdom who's causing trouble. And he's causing trouble for you. And he's leading your people astray. He's leading people away from Rome. They meant he was threatening the Roman peace. If you let this guy go on, there's going to be a rebellion, I'm telling you. And of course, that was untrue. He wasn't looking to lead a rebellion. He was looking to establish a church and to change people's lives for the better, okay, for eternity. They said he opposed the Roman system of taxation. Now, this was ridiculous. This goes back to the time where somebody came to Jesus and said, is it lawful for us to give tax to Caesar? And Jesus said, give me a coin. And they gave him a coin. He says, whose picture is on here? And they said, well, Caesar's. And he said, well, then give to Caesar what's Caesar's, and give to God what's God's. And they twisted that and said, well, then he's saying we shouldn't pay taxes. That's not what he said. In fact, he endorsed paying the tax to Caesar, okay? But he said also that you had a loyalty to God. Based upon Jesus' answer to the question that we just talked about, and his answer actually supported paying taxes. In fact, he went to Peter and said, here, go down, catch the fish. There'll be a coin in his mouth. Go pay our taxes, all right? It's not that simple anymore. Jesus stated that he's the Messiah. He had claimed to be the promised Messiah, the King of the Jews. And Pilate pressed Jesus on this third accusation because the word king came in. There's another king in Israel. We have a king. We have Herod, and he's under my rule. And this king isn't under my rule. This could be trouble. Jesus gave him the same ambiguous answer he gave the council. Well, you said that. What do you think? As Jesus' followers, what are some of the things we might be wrongly accused of? Talk to each other. What are some false accusations against Christians? False accusations against Christians from people who don't know the Lord, okay? Talk to each other. You got 2 minutes to do this one, okay? 2 minutes. One minute. Okay, over on this side, over here on the right. What are, I'm sorry. What? Oh, hate crimes. Okay, right, okay. We hate people who aren't like us. We hate them, right, okay. Somebody over here. False accusation. Okay, because we disagree with their lifestyles, we may be unloving or judgmental. Is that sometimes true? Yeah, sometimes, unfortunately. Others, any others? Self-righteous. You self-righteous hypocrite. Yep. Christians aren't perfect, they're just forgiven. Yep. Okay. Anybody else? What? Oh, illogical, not scientific. Right. That's a good one. Okay. I think that's the ones I got. We're bigots. We just hate everybody. We're bigots. We're not intellectual enough. Yeah. Well, if you just understood what I understand, you would know there is no God. You would grow beyond having a God, and you would be part of the intelligentsia like I am. Okay, so question, how did intelligence get imprinted on matter outside of an intelligent source? Well, we're still working on that. We don't know. Okay, well then. Hating LGBTQ people, there's one that's very specific. And there are some Christians in the way they talk kind of earn this label, but we shouldn't. We need to learn to deal with people we disagree with the way Jesus would have. And that's a challenge. What? Hate the sin, love the sinner. There we go. You just want to condemn everybody to hell, right? You're just hellfire and brimstone, right? And I'm not the one who's talking about hell and talking about judgment. It's God and it's sin. And can I explain to you how this works? Let's go back to the Garden of Eden. Having a purely political agenda. Again, this is one that some Christian leaders and some Christians have kind of earned because that's their thing. My pastor used to say, you know what, as Christians, we can go to seed on anything. You know, sometimes we just get on to one thing, we just go at it and go at it and go at it and go at it, but we forget we're supposed to follow the whole counsel of God. And that can happen. Observation 2. Pilate found Jesus innocent. The enemies of Jesus continued to accuse Jesus of wrongdoing. They just pushed and pushed and pushed, right? Like a little kid in a candy store. But please. Pilate saw that nothing about Jesus was deserving of death. His jurisdiction was within legal civil matters, and legally and civilly, he declared him innocent. That there's no reason for me to condemn this man. I have no law here. He declared that Jesus was innocent according to the Roman law. Now, that should have been end of the case, right? Sound the gavel, case dismissed, you're free to go. No, didn't work that way. The religious matters were the domain of the Jewish council, but they wanted to take that and carry it over to the civil council to get him to kill him, okay? They wanted him dead. Instead of accepting Pilate's proclamation of innocence, the Jewish leaders pushed their agenda. They presented Pilate with more evidence of the supposed negative influence of Jesus on the people. They said, this is a troublemaker. You're going to regret this day if you let this man go. He's going to blow up the whole thing. He's inciting the people. He's inciting riot. He's a troublemaker. You've got to understand. Now, this is interesting. By bringing up where Jesus taught in Galilee, they specifically mentioned he's from Galilee. Remember, Nathaniel, what good can ever come out of Galilee and Nazareth, right? They were probably trying to link him to a tax revolt led by a Galilean back in AD 6. Galilee was just the seat of troublemakers. That's where the troublemakers came from. Now he's from Galilee. And now he's going to lead the people in revolt. They painted him as another Galilean troublemaker. And the Jewish leaders presented him as a revolutionary. He's trying to overthrow the Roman government. Now, Think with me for a minute, okay? The Jewish leaders, how much love did they have for the Roman government? Zip, okay? They were looking forward to the day where the Roman government would be gone and they'd be in charge again, okay? They were not friends of the Roman government, but what's the old saying? Politics makes strange bedfellows. They have now teamed up with Pilate to say, we got to get rid of this guy. He's causing trouble for us. He's going to cause trouble for you too. Get rid of him. Get him out of here. Revolutionary. That is, knowing Jesus lived a holy and innocent life but still dealt with persecution and injustice, encourage you when you're facing similar troubles. Here's some ways that Jesus encourages us through his example. One, he understands. Hebrews says, we do not have a high priest who cannot be touched with the feeling of our infirmities, but he was on all points tempted like as we are, yet without sin. Jesus gets us. Jesus gets it. When you and I are going through tough times, didn't Jesus go through tough times? Much tougher than us. When our hearts are troubled, was his heart ever troubled? But of course, look at the Garden of Eden. When friends let us down, does he understand? Of course. He had that happen all the time, right? One of the comforting facts that we as Christians need to get into our heads is that Jesus understands. And he said to us, come unto me, all you who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Secondly, knowing he gives us the strength. He giveth more grace. He giveth more grace when the burdens grow greater. Right? Isn't that the song? My grace is sufficient for you, for my strength is made perfect in weakness. Now, there comes a time where as Christians, when we're going through these times, we need to ask ourselves a question. And the question is, do I believe this or not? Do I really believe he is a gracious God? Do I really believe he will give me the grace I need here? John Piper talks about future grace. Will he give me the grace I need in the future if I ever face some difficult trial? And the answer, biblically, is what, class? Yes. But sometimes we act as if it's, well, I don't know. I'll get back to you on that. And that's not what the Bible says. Knowing the right will ultimately prevail. What's the old saying? I read the end of the book, and God's side wins, right? We live in a day today where people are very troubled. They see what's happening in the world. They see the situation over in Israel and over in the Middle East, and they see other countries just getting at it, and they are worried. They're scared. And sometimes they're going to ask you, so what's going on? What's going on? We have the answer, right? We can take them to the Bible and say, well, let me share with you what's going on. Let me share with you why it's going on. The man's heart is deceitful and above all things. It's desperately wicked, and wicked hearts do wicked things. But God has dealt with that in Jesus Christ, right? The right will prevail. We're on the right side, but we need to persevere. Point 3, Jesus, the King of Jews, is wrongly condemned. Okay, here's where the rubber meets the road. Pilate then called together the chief priests and rulers and said to the people, hear me, here's my verdict. You brought me this man as one who's misleading the people, and after examining him before you, behold, I did not find this man guilty of any of your charges against him. And the court recorder is not guilty. Neither did Herod. I sent him over to Herod. Now, this is another interesting story. Herod and Pilate were not friends. They didn't get along. Herod was the Jewish king who was supposed to be ruling over, and Pilate was the Roman governor. And they had butted heads several times. But after Pilate sent Jesus over to see Herod, and Herod gave his pronouncement, they became friends. The Bible says after that time, things went well between them. Again, Nothing deserving of death has been done by him. I will therefore punish, whip, scourge, and release him. But they all cried out together, away with this man. Release to us Barabbas, a man who'd been thrown into prison for an insurrection started in the city and for murder. Pilate addressed them once more, desiring to release Jesus. But they kept shouting, crucify him, crucify him. A third time he said to them, why? What evil has he done? I have found in him no guilt deserving of death. I will therefore punish and release him. And if he just stopped right there, he would have been fine. But he doesn't. They were urgent. They demanded with loud cries that he should be crucified. Their voices prevailed. So Pilate decided that their demand should be granted. All right, we'll do it your way. Great leader, right? He released the man who'd been thrown into prison for insurrection and murder, for whom they asked, but he delivered Jesus over to their will. Observation number one. I just got to sit for a minute. My back is bothering me. Okay. Pilate found no guilt in Jesus, but because of the insistent cries of the crowd, he condemned him. You're innocent, but they say you're guilty, so you're guilty, right? Pilate continued to declare to the Jewish leaders there was no grounds by which he could indict Jesus. He says, legally, I can't do this. He knew his law. He sought to appease the people by having Jesus whipped and then released. He says, okay, we'll have him whipped. We'll have him scourged. Scourging in those days was called the almost death. Sometimes prisoners actually died after being scourged. It was terrible. This was his attempt to close the civil case once and for all. Scourge him, let him go, that's it. Order in the court. However, the tide turned when the crowd joined in against Jesus at the urging of their leaders. They invoked the custom Roman governors observed at the Passover, releasing a prisoner as a sign of goodwill. Again, this is politics. Once a year, the Roman governor would try to play nice with the people and say, okay, this is the Passover. I know it's a special holiday for you. And so to celebrate the Passover, I'll release one Jewish prisoner. Who do you want? They wanted Barabbas. Now, Barabbas was a kind of wicked man they accused Jesus of being. He was an insurrectionist and he was a murderer. He deserved to be crucified. They called for Jesus to be crucified in Barabbas' place, and the punishment Barabbas faced was taken on by Jesus. Sort of a picture of Jesus dying for us. Why is this happening? Think about this. Crowd control was a major concern for Roman governors like Pilate. In some ways, Pilate was a middle manager, okay? Middle managers know that you're in a balance. You have the people under you that you have to deal with, but then you have the people over you that you have to please. And Pilate had the area of Galilee and Jerusalem that he was to be over, but he also had the Roman government and Caesar who were breathing down his back all the time, okay? And crowd control was a big deal. The reason was they were appointed, the governor was appointed by the Romans to keep order, to keep peace. Historically, the Jewish region of Galilee and Samaria of Judea had been a trouble spot for the Romans. The Jewish leaders would instill a riot. They would get upset over something that the governor did that wasn't according to their law. They have a big insurrection. And governors of that area had come and gone as a result. The good news is you got a promotion. You're going to be a governor. The bad news is you're going to be the governor of Israel, buddy. And you're in trouble. Any riots or insurrections would automatically be reported back to Rome, and Pilate's position would be threatened. This could turn into a major blowout, and if it did, Pilate would be recalled and disciplined back at Rome. Yeah, you get to go somewhere as far, far, far away. So why is mob rule so effective? I just want to go, because there are a couple of things here with you. Mob rule. One, people will do things in a mob they would not normally do alone. My father was a newspaper man. He covered the news, and when the riots hit, I would say, why are they doing this? And he would say, it's a principle. You can get people to do something they wouldn't normally do in a crowd if everybody else is doing it. Well, everybody else is doing it. Everybody else broke into that store. I can go grab something for me too, Everybody else is, And, as kids, we used to use that as an excuse, right? Well, why? Anybody who deals with riots, anybody who deals with revolutionaries understands if you can incite a mob, you can get a lot of power, okay? The voice of many is more powerful than the voice of one. One person yelling out in the crowd going, crucify him, crucify him. Pilate was going to go, nah. The whole crowd yelling, crucify him, crucify him. Pilate's going, I got trouble on my hands. And the frenetic energy of a mob is dangerous and unpredictable. Have we not seen that in riots? Have we not seen that in demonstrations? Not to become a communist, but to understand it. You got to understand, it was the 60s. And one of the things they taught us was they will incite a riot. If they got chaos, they could take over, right? That was the idea. That he or she is able to overcome sin's enslavement through the power of the Holy Spirit. Okay? So the only hope for man